Somebody made a remark, and I'm always misquoted on it, and it wasn't me, it was somebody else. Well, what was it like seeing The Sound of Music, Hewitt? And this person said, well, it was like being beaten to death by a Hallmark card.
The Sound of Music * seems like the perfect movie. It's the story we all know, full of beautiful songs and stunning landscapes that have felt magical for generations. But what if I told you that behind the idyllic scenery and perfect harmonies, the making of the film was chaotic, bizarre, and filled with on-set accidents and shocking cast secrets that will change how you see this beloved classic? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on 20 weird facts you've never heard about The Sound of Music. And trust me, you'll want to stick around for the last one, because it's a truly strange piece of Hollywood history. That iconic opening shot of Maria spinning on a mountaintop looks like pure joy. The reality was anything but effortless. In fact, for Julie Andrews, it was a nightmare. To get those sweeping aerial shots in an age before drones, the crew used a massive jet helicopter with a cameraman strapped to its side. The problem was, the powerful machine created a huge downdraft. Every time the helicopter passed over her and circled back for another take, the force of the engines would knock Julie Andrews flat into the grass. She said she'd brace herself, thinking, "It's not going to get me this time," only to be slammed into the mud again and again. After about 6 or 7 takes, she was spitting dirt and getting genuinely angry. So while we see a moment of cinematic magic, Julie Andrews was basically in a fight with a very loud, very windy co-star. Christopher Plummer's Captain Von Trapp is the picture of stern, dignified authority. Off-screen, however, Plummer famously hated the movie, and he coped by enjoying all the food and drink Salzburg had to offer. A classically trained Shakespearean actor, Plummer found the story way too sentimental, privately calling the film The Sound of Mucus. He felt the captain was a flat, boring character and later admitted, "I was a pampered, arrogant, young bastard spoiled by too many great theater roles." To deal with his artistic boredom, he dove headfirst into the local pastries. He gained so much weight during filming that his custom-made costumes had to be let out, and in some cases, completely remade. His indulgence peaked while filming the big finale at the music festival. By his own admission, Christopher Plummer was completely hammered during the shooting of that iconic scene. The romantic 16 going on 17 dance in the gazebo is a sweet, innocent highlight. But for Charmian Carr, the actress playing Liesel, the scene ended with a painful accident. The choreography had Carr leaping across the gazebo's polished benches. The problem was, the costumers had forgotten to put non-slip rubber soles on her shoes. On one of the first takes, as she made a leap, her feet went right out from under her, and she crashed straight through a glass pane of the gazebo. She wasn't badly cut, but she did seriously sprain her ankle. Being a total pro, she got a pain-numbing shot from the set doctor to keep filming. To hide the injury, her ankle was wrapped in a bandage, which was then covered with makeup and hidden under her stockings. If you look closely during that dance, you can see that her right ankle looks a little thicker than her left, a subtle reminder of the day her dance took a painful turn. The scene where Maria and the children all tip over in a canoe is a moment of pure, chaotic joy. Behind the scenes, however, it turned into a moment of sheer panic. Kim Carruth, the 5-year-old actress playing Gretel, couldn't swim. The plan was for Julie Andrews, who was in the boat with her, to fall forward and grab the little girl as soon as the canoe tipped. The first take went fine. But on the second take, it all went wrong. The boat overturned differently, and Julie Andrews was thrown backward, away from Kim. The little girl went under the water alone. An assistant director saw her flailing and had to dive into the lake, fully clothed, to rescue her. Once she was safe, the terrified Kim promptly threw up all over Heather Menzies-Urich, the actress who played Louisa. It was a terrifying moment that was far from the joyful splash we see in the movie. The movie gives us a Maria who is gentle, sweet, and patient. The real Maria von Trapp, whose memoir inspired the story, was not like that at all. By her own admission, she was a rebel at the convent, calling herself horrid, the worst you can imagine. She was constantly sliding down banisters, climbing on the roof, and breaking the rules. Her superiors actually encouraged her to take the governess job with the Von Trapps, partly just to get a break from her, and she wasn't sent to be a governess for all 7 children. In 1926, she was hired to be a tutor for just one of the daughters, also named Maria, who was recovering from scarlet fever. The soft-spoken character Julie Andrews played was a Hollywood creation. The real Maria was a force of nature. One of the film's biggest emotional punches is Captain Von Trapp's transformation from a cold, whistle-blowing dad who forbids music into a loving father. This powerful story deeply upset the real Von Trapp children, mainly because it was completely false. The real George Von Trapp was the opposite of the man we first meet in the movie. His children describe, if the Von Trapps had actually hiked over the mountains behind their house in Salzburg, they would have walked straight into Germany. In fact, they would have ended up dangerously close to Hitler's mountain retreat, the Eagle's Nest. The real Maria Von Trapp reportedly found this hilarious, saying, "Don't they know geography in Hollywood? Salzburg does not border on Switzerland." Their actual escape was less dramatic but just as brave. In 1938, they simply packed their bags, told everyone they were going on a singing tour in America, and boarded a train to Italy in broad daylight. From there, they made their way to the United States. It was an act of quiet, calculated defiance, not a dramatic trek over a mountain. Hollywood loves to simplify a true story. The film gives us 7 Von Trapp children. The reality? There were 10. George Von Trapp had 7 children with his first wife, Agathe, but their names, ages, and even genders were changed for the movie. For example, the oldest child wasn't a 16-year-old girl named Liesel. It was a boy named Rupert, who was already a doctor when the family left Austria. After marrying George, Maria had 3 more children with him, Rosemarie, Eleanor, and Johannes, bringing the total to 10. The decision to shrink the family down to 7 was purely a creative one to make the cast of characters more manageable for the audience. The romance between Maria and the captain is the heart of the movie, but the real-life version was much more practical. Maria and George did get married, but it was in 1927, a full 11 years before they fled Austria. And according to Maria herself, she didn't marry the captain because she was in love with him. In her memoirs, she wrote honestly that she wasn't in love with George when they wed, she was in love with his children. She said she felt a duty to the kids who had grown so attached to her. She only liked him at the time, though she grew to love him deeply over the years. Their marriage began not with a passionate romance, but with a shared affection for 7 children who needed a mother. Every romance needs an obstacle, and in the movie, that's the wealthy, sophisticated Baroness Elsa Schrader. She creates the love triangle that forces Maria and the captain to face their feelings. She is also completely fictional. There was no Baroness Schrader. There was no love triangle. The character was invented by the screenwriters to add dramatic tension to the plot. In the real family's history, this pivotal character simply didn't exist. It's wild how much of this story was pure Hollywood magic, right? If you're enjoying uncovering these secrets, take a second to hit that subscribe button. We have a lot more weird facts to get through, and you won't want to miss them. In the early 1960s, 20th Century Fox was in serious financial trouble. The studio had hemorrhaged money on the epic film Cleopatra, which, despite its massive stars, was a box office disaster that pushed the studio to the brink of collapse. Fox was desperate for a hit and took a huge gamble on a cheerful musical about a family of singers. At the time, many thought the era of the wholesome musical was over. But The Sound of Music became a global sensation. Released in 1965, it shattered box office records, becoming the highest-grossing film of all time for 5 years. While the studio had other things going on, the staggering success of this one film was the primary force that pulled 20th Century Fox back from financial ruin. In the film, Max Detweiler is the charming, opportunistic music promoter who gets the family into the Salzburg Festival. The real musical guide for the Trapp family singers was a man named Father Franz Wasner. He was a priest who was renting a room at the Von Trapp villa. After hearing the family sing, he became their musical director for over 20 years. He arranged their complex harmonies and turned them into a world-class professional choir. When the musical was being created, the producers reportedly told Maria they could either have a character representing her or a character representing the priest, but not both. So, the dedicated priest was transformed into the fun-loving impresario, Max. Just before she became Maria von Trapp, Julie Andrews had finished playing another iconic nanny, Mary Poppins. And she was seriously worried about it. She feared that playing two of the most famous nannies in movie history back-to-back would get her typecast forever. To prove her range, she made a very strategic move. Between filming Mary Poppins and starting The Sound of Music, she starred in a dark, anti-war comedy called The Americanization of Emily, where she played a cynical war widow. It was the complete opposite of a cheerful, singing governess. It was a clever move that let her step into Maria's shoes without fear of being stuck in the nanny box forever. The Lonely Goatherd marionette show is one of the most memorable parts of the film. But those puppets weren't just props, they were operated by absolute legends in their field. The show was performed by Bill and Cora Baird, two of the most famous puppeteers of the 20th century. They were world-renowned artists who had performed on Broadway and television. The filmmakers hired them to pay homage to the famous Salzburg Marionette Theatre and to ensure the puppet show was as amazing as possible. A large collection of their work, including some of the puppets from the film, is now at the McNider Art Museum in Iowa. Keeping 7 child actors entertained during a long film shoot is a tough job. Luckily, they had an unexpected caretaker, Julie Andrews. She took on a motherly role with the kids, creating a playful atmosphere to get through the long days and weather delays. To pass the time between takes, she would sing songs with them. One song she famously taught them was Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Since Mary Poppins hadn't been released yet, the kids felt like they were in on a huge secret. They all remembered her kindness for years, saying she wasn't just a co-star but a real friend and their unofficial on-set nanny. The legendary look of The Sound of Music was no accident. It was all planned out, shot by shot, before the cameras ever started rolling. Director Robert Wise hired an artist named Maurice Zuberano to create detailed storyboards for the entire movie. Zuberano traveled with Wise to Austria to scout locations. For 10 weeks, Wise explained his vision for every scene, the camera angles, the mood, the composition, and Zuberano translated it all into a visual blueprint. Nearly everything you see on screen, from the sweeping mountain shots to the intimate moments in the villa, was drawn by Zuberano first. Filming on location in Salzburg gave the movie its stunning, authentic backdrop, but it also created a massive headache for the sound department. The city was noisy, much of the dialogue recorded on set was ruined by traffic, airplanes, and the constant rain that plagued the production. This meant that a huge portion of the film's dialogue had to be completely re-recorded in a studio later. The cast had to spend 3 weeks in post-production, watching themselves on screen and trying to perfectly match their original lip movements, a process called dubbing. The pristine audio you hear in the final film is actually a complex mix of on-set sound and carefully re-recorded lines. The film's grand finale at the Salzburg Festival was filmed in a real venue called the Felsenreitschule. To fill the audience, the production hired about 1,000 local extras. There was just one big problem: the scene was set on a warm summer evening, so everyone was dressed in light summer clothes. In reality, it was bitterly cold, with temperatures just above freezing. The extras had to sit for hours in the cold, pretending to enjoy a beautiful night at the festival. Between takes, they would all huddle together for warmth, a stark contrast to the celebratory mood they were supposed to be creating on camera. Kim Carruth, who played Gretel, was only 5 years old. Over the many months of filming, she grew and gained a noticeable amount of weight, which became a problem for the movie's final scene. In the famous closing shot, Captain Von Trapp is carrying Gretel on his back as the family hikes over the mountains. By the time they filmed this, Christopher Plummer found that the now slightly heavier Kim was too much to carry for multiple takes. So, he requested a stunt double. In that iconic final image, the child on Christopher Plummer's back isn't actually Kim Carruth. It's a lighter stand-in to make the hike a little easier on the captain. This last one is a strange piece of Hollywood lore. The ending we all know is iconic. The family escapes over the mountains to the sound of "Climb Every Mountain." But according to some behind-the-scenes accounts, a completely different ending was filmed by a second unit, possibly without the director's knowledge. This alternate version reportedly cut the family's escape entirely, leaving their fate totally ambiguous. The motives for filming this are unclear, but it was a huge departure from the triumphant ending director Robert Wise wanted. When Wise found out, he was furious. He immediately ordered it to be scrapped and made sure his original, inspiring ending was the one that made it into the final film. From near drownings and on-set injuries to completely fabricated characters, the story behind The Sound of Music is just as dramatic as the film itself. The perfect world we see on screen was built on a foundation of chaos, challenges, half-truths, and happy accidents. The story of the Vaughn traps we know is a fairy tale, but the story of how that fairy tale was made is perhaps even more fascinating. What fact surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you want to explore the hidden history of more of your favorite movies, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. And for more weird facts and untold stories, check out this next video. We'll see you there.